Performing a fresh air exchange can be a great technique for you to induce the fruiting stage of your mushrooms. Now, there's several different techniques that we'll go over, and I'll demonstrate one of those today. And as always, make sure you're wearing your PPE, make sure you're using your 70% isopropyl alcohol, and make sure you're working in a clean area. Now, for today's demonstration, I'm going to be doing this in front of our 4x2 flow hood. It's a great piece of equipment for the newbies and for the pros to ensure that you don't have any particulates or any foreign objects that are going to be flying into your bag, which could cause contamination. So I've already cleaned this surface down, but I'm going to do it again. There's no such thing as too clean, and just always make sure you're working in a clean area. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the actual bag itself. Start with the bottom so that the bottom is nice and clean before we put it in our clean area, and then begin working on the bag. So as I mentioned, there are several different techniques on how you can perform a fresh air exchange. However, the one that I'm going to demonstrate today is the one that we feel is the least likely to potentially cause contamination. Because this process involves opening up the bag and cutting the bag open, you're leaving the bag susceptible to potential contamination if any particulates were to enter into the bag. Going over a couple of the different techniques that we've seen used often in mycology, first of which is opening the bag across the entire top, exposing the top, billowing out or squeezing out the excess CO2, and letting the flow hood or oxygen flow back into the bag before closing it up with a couple paper clips or some micropore tape. That's option number one. Option number two, or technique number two, is what we call dog ears. Dog ears are when you simply put two slits on the sides of the bag approximately level with the bottom of the patch at approximately a 45-degree angle, giving it that dog ear appearance. The reason that angle is important is because we want the moisture to stay inside the bag. And the angle of that cut allows the moisture to keep circulating in the bag and not jump out of the bag. You'll sometimes see people put a slit at the bottom. This is to help release the CO2, which is a denser, a heavier gas that usually resides at the bottom of the bag. In today's technique, I'm going to show you guys a much easier way to do this. And it's simply by creating an oval-sized shape cut right here along the back or the front. It doesn't really matter, but somewhere approximately halfway up the bag, a little bit up from the substrate line. This is important because this is where the oxygen will be flowing into the bag, and as the mushrooms start producing fruits, those fruits will be reaching or stretching for that oxygen. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. As always, make sure, again, using your isopropyl alcohol. I also went ahead and made sure that I disinfected and got my scissors ready. I have some micropore 3M micropore tape. This is approximately 5 micron, so it will keep particulates out, but it'll also allow gas exchange to happen. And last but not least, I also have my mycomultiplier on here, which I'll be applying at the very end on the bottom of the bag, and this is to reduce side pinning from happening. Side pinning is what happens when the microclimate on the side of the bag in these little pockets of air is ideal for mushrooms to be produced. We cut off the oxygen supply to the side of the bag, forcing the fruits to start growing in an upward direction on the top of the substrate line. So let's go ahead and begin. We already cleaned off our bag, so we're going to grab our scissors. I will make one key point here. If you're using our Plus bag has a wide patch along here, you're likely not going to have to perform a fresh air exchange at all. That's what I love about those bags. Because of the wider patch, you have more gas exchange happening, so you likely won't have to do a fresh air exchange. But in this demonstration, we're using our standard bag. What I usually like, pinch the bag right along the line here. It's a few inches from the top of the substrate line and a little bit more than halfway down from the top of the bag. Pinch this little area here, and what I'm going to cut out a little semicircle that will create a little eye-shaped hole here. The hole should be around 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. No need to make it any bigger than that. but should look something like this. So I'm going to start cutting a little oval shape. The reason for the oval shape is because we are going to be using our micropore tape for an added layer of security. We want there to be adequate surface area for oxygen to come in and for CO2 to escape. And I'm doing this in front of a flow hood. I would highly recommend getting a flow hood if you don't have one. I'm just going to billow out the CO2 that's been building up in that bag, push it out, and I let the flow hood fill that bag up with fresh oxygen. This will help induce the pinning process. It's called pinning because you will start seeing little pinhead-sized mushrooms being produced, and that is a sign that your bag is ready for fruiting. Once this is done, I'm going to grab my micropore tape, and I'm using 3M micropore tape from 3M. This is the challenging part with gloves, so I usually like to prepare prior, but we'll get through this. I'm taking about a 3-inch piece of micropore tape and covering this oval hole that we just created. And there you have it. You've now performed a fresh air exchange. Again, there's many techniques. There is no right or wrong. The principle is the same. You're looking to release the excess CO2 and introduce fresh and more oxygen into the bag. And now your bag is ready for the fruiting process. Last step is we're just going to apply the myco-multiplier onto the bottom of the bag. I like to do it like this. Put it somewhere close to the top end of the substrate. And there you have it. Your bag is now ready for the last stage, the fruiting stage.